Have you ever wondered what would happen if your loyal dog uncovered a government conspiracy? What if one walk in the park changed your life forever? In New York City, a K-9 officer's trust in his German Shepherd exposed corruption at the highest levels. I'm taking you on a thrilling journey where instinct trumps authority and one man and his dog are hunted by the system they swore to protect. This isn't just another cop story. It's a pulse-pounding tale of betrayal and courage. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next extraordinary story. Now, buckle up for Duke's Instinct, where one dog's determination unravels a conspiracy that reaches all the way to Washington. The early October morning carried a crisp chill that signaled the arrival of fall in New York City. Central Park was alive with joggers, their breath visible in small clouds as they circled the training area where Ethan Carter stood tall and focused. At 42, Ethan's athletic build and military posture spoke of his 15 years as an NYPD K-9 trainer. The slight salt and pepper at his temples contrasted with otherwise dark hair, and the faint scar above his right eyebrow told stories he rarely shared. "Duke, attention!" Ethan commanded, his voice firm but not harsh. The magnificent German Shepherd, 90 pounds of muscle, intelligence, and loyalty, snapped to attention, amber eyes locked on his handler. Several NYPD officers watched from the sidelines as Ethan demonstrated advanced search techniques. Duke had become something of a department legend, with the highest success rate in narcotics and suspect tracking in the precinct's history. "The key is consistency," Ethan explained to the officers, most of whom were handlers in training. "These animals aren't just tools. They're partners who can read situations sometimes better than we can." Officer Jenny Ramirez, a new K-9 handler, nodded appreciatively. "How long did it take to build that level of trust?" 2 years of daily work," Ethan replied, reaching down to scratch behind Duke's ears. "But the foundation was there in weeks." "It's about—" Duke suddenly stiffened, his ears perking forward. Ethan recognized the change immediately. The dog's posture had transformed from relaxed attentiveness to high alert. "Duke?" Ethan questioned, watching as the shepherd's focus shifted to something behind him. Without warning, Duke bolted toward the parking area where several police cruisers were stationed. The dog bypassed the first 3 vehicles and stopped at a black Crown Victoria with K-9 unit emblazoned on its side. Duke began pawing frantically at the trunk, emitting a low, urgent whine that Ethan had never heard before. "Hey, get your dog under control, Carter," shouted Sergeant Marcus Bradley, a stocky, red-faced veteran with 22 years on the force. Bradley strode toward them, coffee in hand, annoyance evident in his expression. "That's department property he's scratching up." Ethan jogged over, confusion written across his face. "Duke, heel." The command went unheeded as Duke continued pawing at the trunk, now barking with increasing intensity. "What's gotten into him?" Bradley demanded, setting his coffee on the hood of the car. "I thought your mutt was supposed to be the best trained animal in the department." "He is," Ethan replied, his concern growing. "And that's what worries me. Duke doesn't react like this without reason." He knelt beside his partner, noting the dog's dilated pupils and rigid posture. "Something's wrong, Sergeant. We need to check the trunk." Bradley scoffed, adjusting his belt. "It's probably just a sandwich somebody left in there. Or maybe he's picking up residual scent from a drug bust last week." By now, a small crowd had gathered. Officers from the training session, park maintenance workers, and a few curious joggers who'd stopped to watch the commotion. "This isn't a food reaction," Ethan insisted, his voice dropping to a serious tone. "I know this dog. Something's in there that shouldn't be." "Carter, I've been doing this since you were in high school," Bradley said dismissively. "Dogs get false positives all the time. It happens." Ethan stood his ground, feeling a cold certainty settling in his gut. "With all due respect, sir, I've never seen Duke give a false positive. Not once in 6 years. Whatever's in that trunk needs our attention." Officer Ramirez stepped forward. "Sergeant, what if he's right? Wouldn't it be better to check and be sure?" Bradley's face reddened further. "Fine. You want to waste department time on your dog's hunch? Be my guest." He pulled out his keys and jabbed at the trunk release button. "But when this turns out to be nothing, I'm filing a training review." The trunk latch clicked open, and as Bradley lifted it, the crowd fell silent. Duke's instinct had been right all along. Shocked silence hung in the air as the trunk fully opened. Inside lay a man in his mid-30s, his white dress shirt soaked with blood around his abdomen. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, and his breathing came in shallow, ragged gasps. Clutched tightly against his chest was a sleek laptop and a manila folder, both smeared with blood. "Jesus Christ," Bradley whispered, his previous arrogance evaporating. He immediately reached for his radio. "This is Sergeant Bradley. We need a bus at the Central Park K-9 training area, now? Officer down. Repeat, officer down." Ethan leaned into the trunk, carefully checking the man's pulse. He's alive, but barely. His training kicked in as he applied pressure to the most severe wound. "Sir, can you hear me? Can you tell us who did this to you?" The man's eyes fluttered open, revealing a piercing blue gaze clouded with pain. "Flynn," he mumbled. "Agent Michael Flynn." Officer Ramirez pushed through the gathering crowd. "Everyone back up. Give him air." She turned to the other officers. "Secure the perimeter. Nobody leaves until we figure out what happened." Duke remained vigilant beside the vehicle, his posture still alert, as if sensing danger remained present. Ethan noticed the dog's behavior and grew increasingly uneasy. Something about this situation felt wrong on multiple levels. "FBI?" Bradley questioned, eyeing the man's attire. "What the hell is a Fed doing in the trunk of an NYPD vehicle?" Flynn's bloodied fingers tightened around the laptop. "Evidence," he gasped. "Corruption goes all the way to the top." His eyes darted nervously around the gathering of officers. "Can't trust department." Bradley's expression hardened. "What's he talking about?" "Carter, get that laptop and folder. We need to secure potential evidence." Ethan hesitated, noting the desperate way Flynn clutched the items. "Sir, with respect, we should wait for—" "That wasn't a suggestion, Carter," Bradley snapped. "This is an active crime scene now, and I'm the ranking officer. The evidence needs to be cataloged properly." As Ethan reluctantly reached for the items, Flynn grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "No," he whispered, voice barely audible. "They're involved. Internal affairs has been compromised." His eyes bored into Ethan's. "Trust no one." The wail of approaching sirens cut through the morning air. Bradley straightened up, his expression unreadable. "Step back, Carter. EMTs will take it from here." Ethan reluctantly moved away, but whispered to Flynn, "I'll make sure whatever you found gets to the right people." "Officer Carter," Bradley's voice carried a warning tone. "Back away from the vehicle now." Duke growled softly, an unusual reaction toward a fellow officer that didn't escape Ethan's notice. In his 15 years with the department, Ethan had developed a sixth sense for when things weren't right, and right now, every instinct was screaming danger. The ambulance pulled up, and EMTs rushed forward with a stretcher. As they worked to stabilize Flynn, Ethan noticed Bradley having an intense, whispered conversation on his phone, repeatedly glancing toward the injured agent. "Strange place to find an FBI agent, isn't it?" Ramirez mused, standing beside Ethan. "And in an NYPD vehicle no less." "Very strange," Ethan agreed, watching as the EMTs prepared to transport Flynn. "This car was scheduled for K-9 training today. Someone put him here deliberately, knowing we'd find him. Or hoping we wouldn't," Ramirez added. As Flynn was loaded into the ambulance, Bradley approached, his expression now professionally detached. "I've contacted headquarters. This investigation is being classified. No one discusses what we found here today, understood?" "Sir," Ethan pressed, "shouldn't we inform the FBI that one of their agents was—" "That's being handled at a higher level," Bradley interrupted. "This is potentially connected to an ongoing joint task force operation. Top brass wants this contained until we know more." Ethan nodded, but the knot in his stomach tightened. Duke remained unusually alert, eyes tracking Bradley's every move. In 6 years together, Ethan had learned to trust his partner's instincts. Something wasn't adding up, and Ethan Carter had a sinking feeling that they'd just stumbled into something far more dangerous than anyone realized. Retry or continue edit 3. The discovery in the vehicle, the ambulance doors slammed shut, but not before Ethan caught one last desperate glance from Agent Flynn. The intensity of that look stayed with him as the emergency vehicle pulled away, sirens wailing across the park. Duke remained unusually tense, his body language signaling continued unease. "All right, people, show's over," Bradley announced to the lingering crowd. Ramirez, start taking statements from everyone who was present. Carter, I need a full report on how your dog detected the agent. Ethan nodded but kept his eyes on the vehicle's trunk, which remained open. What about processing the scene, Sergeant? There could be trace evidence that might tell us how he ended up there. Bradley's jaw tightened. Forensics has been notified. Until they arrive, nobody touches anything. He turned to address the small crowd of officers and civilians. This area is now a restricted crime scene. All civilians need to clear out immediately. As the crowd dispersed, Ethan noticed something. A small memory card that had fallen to the ground near where Flynn had been lying. With Bradley momentarily distracted giving orders, Ethan casually knelt beside Duke, pretending to check the dog's paws. Good boy, he whispered, palming the memory card while appearing to remove debris from Duke's paw. The small piece of technology felt impossibly heavy in his hand as he slipped it into his pocket. Carter, Bradley's sharp voice cut through his thoughts. I said I need your report. Let's step over here. As they moved away from the vehicle, Ethan noticed a black SUV pulling up at the park entrance. Four men in suits emerged, their movements precise and coordinated in a way that screamed federal training. Who called in the feds so quickly? Ethan asked, nodding toward the approaching men. Bradley's expression remained neutral. Like I said, this connects to an ongoing investigation. Just follow protocol and let me handle the interdepartmental communications. Before Ethan could respond, the park's atmosphere changed as a commanding presence arrived. Captain James Reynolds, head of the Special Investigations Unit, stepped out of an unmarked car. At 55, Reynolds carried himself with the confidence of a man accustomed to authority. His silver hair was precisely cut, his suit impeccable, and his reputation for being politically connected was well known throughout the department. Sergeant Bradley, Reynolds called out, his voice carrying across the scene. Situation report. Bradley immediately straightened. Captain, we've discovered an injured man identifying himself as FBI agent Michael Flynn hidden in the trunk of a department vehicle. EMTs have transported him to Presbyterian, Reynolds interrupted. I've already been briefed. Where are the materials he was carrying? Ethan's instincts flared at how quickly Reynolds had specified the hospital and how focused he was on the materials rather than the agent's condition. Still in the vehicle, sir, Bradley replied. We were waiting for forensics to properly document and collect the evidence. Reynolds nodded to the men in suits who had now joined them. These gentlemen will be taking over the evidence collection. This case has national security implications. He turned to Ethan. Officer Carter, I understand your K-9 made the discovery? Yes, sir, Ethan replied, keeping his voice steady despite his growing unease. Duke alerted to the trunk specifically. In my experience, his behavior suggested he detected human distress, not contraband. Reynolds studied Ethan for a moment. Impressive animal. The department could use more like him. His gaze shifted to the German Shepherd. Bring the K-9 unit to my office tomorrow morning. I want a full debrief. With all due respect, Captain, Ethan began, shouldn't we be coordinating with the FBI directly since one of their agents was Officer Carter? Reynolds cut him off, his tone cooling several degrees. This situation is more complex than it appears. These men, he gestured to the suits, represent a joint task force. They'll handle appropriate notifications. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. National security matters require discretion. I trust you understand that. As the suits moved toward the vehicle, one of them removed the laptop and folder. Ethan watched as they placed the items in an unmarked case without documenting or photographing them first, a clear violation of evidence protocols. Captain, Ethan said, unable to stay silent. Standard procedure requires those items to be processed as evidence before. These aren't standard circumstances, Carter, Reynolds replied sharply. Return to the precinct and file your report. That's an order. As Reynolds walked away, Duke growled softly again, his eyes fixed on the captain's retreating form. In that moment, the memory card in Ethan's pocket felt like it was burning a hole through his uniform. Whatever Flynn had found, whatever had nearly cost him his life, was clearly something powerful people wanted to keep hidden. And somehow, Ethan had just become the keeper of secrets he didn't understand. The precinct buzzed with activity as Ethan finished typing his report, carefully choosing his words. He documented finding Agent Flynn, but omitted any mention of the memory card now hidden in his boot. Duke lay at his feet, still uncharacteristically vigilant despite being in familiar surroundings. Carter, Officer Ramirez approached his desk, keeping her voice low. Something weird is happening. I just heard Flynn's being transferred from Presbyterian. Ethan frowned. Transferred? He was barely stable when they loaded him into the ambulance. Exactly, Ramirez replied, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. Word is they're moving him to some private medical facility instead of the trauma center. Reynolds authorized it personally. Before Ethan could respond, the precinct doors swung open and Captain Reynolds strode in, flanked by two of the suited men from the park. The bullpen fell silent as they passed through, heading straight for the captain's office. Through the glass walls, Ethan watched as Reynolds engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with the men. I don't like this, Ethan muttered. Why would they move a critically injured federal agent away from one of the best trauma centers in the city? Ramirez shrugged. Maybe it's a security protocol? If Flynn was working undercover, then why was he in a department vehicle? Ethan countered. And why bypass standard evidence collection procedures? The glass door to Reynolds' office suddenly opened, and the captain's voice carried across the bullpen. Carter, in my office now. Ethan rose, giving Duke a hand signal to stay. As he approached the captain's office, he noticed several detectives watching him with curious expressions. Inside, Reynolds dismissed the suited men, who gave Ethan calculating looks as they passed. Close the door, Reynolds instructed once they were gone. The captain settled behind his desk, studying Ethan with an unreadable expression. Your report seems incomplete. Ethan maintained a neutral stance. Sir, Agent Flynn was carrying sensitive materials. According to Sergeant Bradley, he was quite adamant about their importance. Reynolds leaned forward. Yet you make no mention of any conversation with Flynn in your report. He was barely conscious, sir, Ethan replied carefully. Most of what he said was incoherent. Reynolds tapped his fingers on the desk. Let me be direct, Carter. Did Flynn say anything to you specifically? Anything about who might have attacked him or what information he was carrying? No, sir. Ethan lied, feeling sweat form on his back. He mentioned corruption, but nothing specific. I assumed he was delirious from blood loss. The captain studied him for a long moment. I've reviewed your service record, Carter. Exemplary performance, multiple commendations. You're considered one of our most reliable K-9 handlers. His tone shifted slightly. It would be unfortunate if a misguided sense of heroism were to interfere with a complex federal investigation. The threat wasn't subtle. Ethan maintained eye contact. I understand my responsibilities to the department, sir. Good, Reynolds nodded. Because Agent Flynn wasn't just any federal agent. He was part of an internal affairs investigation that has severe national security implications. The materials he was carrying contained classified information that could compromise ongoing operations if mishandled. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Anyone interfering with this investigation would be facing federal charges, regardless of their service record. I understand, sir, Ethan replied evenly. Reynolds seemed satisfied. Flynn is being moved to a secure medical facility where he can recover while protected. The FBI has requested we keep this incident contained. He leaned back. You're dismissed, Carter. Keep your K-9 unit ready. We may need your team for follow-up operations. As Ethan turned to leave, Reynolds added, Oh, and Carter? I've assigned Officers Mendez and Wilson to take statements from all witnesses at the park. They'll be collecting additional information to supplement your report. The implication was clear. They were checking his story against others. Back at his desk, Ethan found Duke alert and watchful. Ramirez approached again, this time with a folded newspaper. Thought you might find this interesting, she said casually, dropping it on his desk before walking away. Hidden inside the newspaper was a small note. Presbyterian parking garage, level 3, 30 minutes. Come alone. Ethan glanced up to find Ramirez watching him from across the room. She gave him an almost imperceptible nod before turning away. As he gathered his things and clipped Duke's leash, Ethan noticed one of the suited men from earlier watching him from the hallway. Making a show of checking his watch, Ethan called out to no one in particular, taking Duke for his afternoon training routine. Back in 2 hours. The weight of the memory card in his boot seemed to grow heavier with each step toward the exit. Whatever he'd stumbled into was clearly bigger and more dangerous than he had initially thought. For the first time in his career, Ethan Carter was questioning who in his department he could trust, and wondering if he might already be marked as a liability to be eliminated. Presbyterian Hospital's parking garage was a concrete labyrinth of shadows and echoing sounds. Ethan parked his personal vehicle, a weathered Jeep Cherokee, on level 2, then climbed the stairs to level 3 with Duke at his side. The German Shepherd moved with predatory alertness, sensing his handler's tension. "Easy, boy," Ethan whispered, scanning the dimly lit space. A few scattered cars occupied parking spaces, but there was no sign of Ramirez. Checking his watch, he confirmed he was right on time. The sound of squealing tires from the level below made Duke's ears prick forward. Ethan moved behind a concrete pillar, one hand on Duke's collar to keep him silent. Through the gap between levels, he glimpsed two black SUVs identical to those at the park pulling into level 2, parking directly beside his Jeep. "This isn't good," Ethan muttered, reaching for his phone. Before he could dial, a hand clamped over his shoulder. "Don't move." Ramirez's voice was barely audible. "They're sweeping the building. Flynn's gone." Ethan turned to face her. The young officer's usual confidence was replaced with poorly concealed fear. "What do you mean gone? He never made it to any secure facility," she explained hurriedly. "I have a friend in dispatch." The ambulance was redirected en route, but no patient transfer was ever logged in the system. The implications were chilling. "We need to get out of here," Ethan decided. "They're checking my Jeep already." "This way." Ramirez led them toward an emergency exit. "What did you find, Carter? Why are they so interested in you specifically?" Before Ethan could answer, the stairwell door below them crashed open. Duke growled softly, the hair on his back rising. "No time," Ethan whispered. "Can you create a diversion?" Ramirez nodded, reaching into her jacket. 30 seconds, then run for the north exit. She pressed something into his hand, a set of car keys. "Silver Accord, level 4, space 122. It's my cousin's. Untraceable to me." Before Ethan could protest, Ramirez was moving away, her footsteps deliberately loud on the concrete. Seconds later, he heard her official voice echo through the garage. "NYPD. Stop right there." 2 gunshots followed, fired into the air based on the echo pattern, then shouts and the sound of running feet. Taking his cue, Ethan and Duke sprinted for the emergency stairwell, climbing quickly to level 4. The silver Honda was exactly where Ramirez had indicated. Ethan helped Duke into the back seat, then slid behind the wheel, keeping the headlights off as he navigated toward the exit. In his rearview mirror, he could see figures in tactical gear swarming level 3. At the payment booth, Ethan kept his face turned away from the security camera, paid in cash, and eased onto the street, merging with Manhattan traffic. Only when he was several blocks away did he finally exhale. "What have we gotten ourselves into, Duke?" he murmured, reaching back to scratch the shepherd's ears. The dog whined softly in response. Finding a secluded spot in Riverside Park, Ethan finally removed the memory card from his boot and examined it. Standard issue, nothing distinctive. He needed a computer to access its contents, but going home was too risky. His apartment would be the first place they'd look. The pings of an incoming text message drew his attention. An unknown number had sent coordinates followed by the message, "Safe house. Come alone. Parked 2 blocks away." Trusting his instincts and having few alternatives, Ethan plugged the coordinates into the car's navigation system. They led to Hell's Kitchen, a neighborhood where narrow streets and crowded buildings would make surveillance difficult. As he drove, Ethan's mind raced through the day's events. The injured FBI agent, Reynolds' unusual behavior, the disappeared evidence, and now armed men hunting him through a hospital parking garage. Whatever Flynn had uncovered must be explosive. The coordinates led to a nondescript brick building wedged between a laundromat and a bodega. Following instructions, Ethan parked 2 blocks away, then made his way on foot with Duke, checking constantly for tails. A narrow alley beside the building revealed a steel door with a keypad. As Ethan hesitated, wondering what code to enter, the door buzzed and swung open on its own. Inside, dim emergency lighting revealed a Spartan hallway leading to a freight elevator. "Hello," Ethan called out, hand instinctively moving toward his service weapon before remembering he'd left it locked in his Jeep's glove compartment. Department regulations prohibited carrying while off-duty, a rule he now regretted following. The elevator doors slid open with a metallic groan. Duke tensed beside him, a low rumble in his throat. "It's your choice, Officer Carter," a male voice called from inside the elevator. "But I suggest you decide quickly. Reynolds' men are already canvassing this neighborhood." Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the elevator with Duke at his side. As the doors closed, he found himself face to face with a lean, hard-looking man in his 40s, whose calculating eyes took in every detail of Ethan's appearance. Logan Harris. The man introduced himself without offering a hand. Former Marine Force Recon, current investigative journalist with the New York Sentinel. He nodded toward the memory card Ethan still clutched in his hand. "And I believe you have something that could get us both killed." The elevator began to ascend, carrying Ethan toward a confrontation he never sought and away from the life he once knew. A life that, in the span of 12 hours, had completely unraveled. Logan Harris's loft apartment occupied the building's top floor, a renovated industrial space with exposed brick walls and steel-framed windows offering a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. Sheets of newspaper articles covered one entire wall, connected by red string and annotated with handwritten notes. A physical manifestation of an investigative mind at work. "You can stop looking for cameras and bugs," Logan said, noticing Ethan's wary examination of the space. "This place is swept daily. Old habits from my time in Afghanistan." Duke circled the perimeter of the apartment, sniffing cautiously before settling near the entrance, his body positioned to watch both Ethan and the door. "Smart dog," Logan observed. "Military trained. NYPD K-9 program." Ethan replied, still standing. "How did you know I'd be at the hospital?" Logan moved to a stainless steel kitchen island, pouring 2 glasses of water. "Officer Ramirez contacted me. We've worked together before. She feeds me information sometimes." "And why would she trust you with this?" Ethan accepted the water but didn't drink. "Because I've been investigating Captain Reynolds for 14 months. Logan gestured toward the newspaper wall. "Your discovery this morning finally gives me what I've been waiting for, concrete evidence." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "How do you know what we found?" "I have sources inside the department," Logan replied matter-of-factly. "When an FBI agent investigating police corruption turns up nearly dead in an NYPD vehicle, people talk." He pointed to the memory card in Ethan's hand. "That's why they're hunting you, isn't it?" After a moment's hesitation, Ethan nodded. "Agent Flynn had this, along with a laptop and some files. The others were confiscated immediately, but this fell out during transport. No one else saw it." Logan's expression intensified. "Let's see what got an FBI agent stabbed and stuffed in a trunk." He moved to a workstation in the corner, booting up a laptop that wasn't connected to any visible cables. "This is air-gapped, no network connection. Whatever's on there can't be traced back to us." Ethan handed over the memory card, and Logan inserted it into a reader. As files populated the screen, both men leaned forward. Most were encrypted, but several JPEG images and one video file were accessible. "Jesus," Logan whispered as they scrolled through photos of weapons shipments, financial spreadsheets, and surveillance images of Captain Reynolds meeting with known arms dealers. "This is bigger than I thought." The video file showed a warehouse meeting where Reynolds and several high-ranking police officials were clearly visible, discussing shipment routes with men Ethan recognized from FBI Most Wanted bulletins. "They're running weapons," Ethan stated, the reality sinking in. "Using NYPD resources and personnel to facilitate arms trafficking." Logan nodded grimly. "Not just any weapons. Look at these serial numbers and manifests. These are military-grade firearms being diverted from official channels. Some were supposed to be destroyed after being confiscated in raids. Others appear to have been stolen directly from National Guard armories." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "This explains why Reynolds was so concerned about Flynn's materials. This could put him away for life." "Reynolds isn't the top," Logan said, pointing to a partially visible figure in one photo. "See that sleeve with the flag pin? That's a federal official. This goes beyond the NYPD." The weight of their discovery hung heavy in the air. Ethan paced the length of the loft, mind racing. "I need to get this to Internal Affairs or the FBI directly." Logan's laugh was bitter. "Did you miss the part where they tried to disappear a federal agent today? Flynn was Internal Affairs, and look what happened to him." He gestured to the photos. "These people have connections throughout law enforcement. You don't know who's compromised. So what's your plan?" Ethan demanded. "Publish it. They'll discredit you." claimed the evidence was fabricated. "Not if we get more," Logan replied, eyes gleaming with the fervor of a journalist on the verge of a career-defining story. "This is a start, but we need to follow the money trail. And we need to find Flynn, if he's still alive." Duke suddenly stood at attention, ears forward, focused on the door. A second later, Ethan's burner phone vibrated. It was a text from Ramirez. "They know. Reynolds has your photo circulating. Shoot to kill order issued. Claim, officer gone rogue, stole evidence in FBI case." Ethan showed the message to Logan, whose expression hardened. "They're moving faster than I expected. We need to relocate." He began shutting down the computer and gathering equipment. "Where?" Ethan asked, the reality of his situation crashing down on him. "They'll have my apartment watched, my family, friends, everyone I know. I have another safe house in Brooklyn," Logan replied, packing the laptop and memory card into a reinforced case. "But first, we need more information." He pulled out a secure phone. "I have a contact at the hospital who owes me a favor. If Flynn was taken somewhere instead of killed, there might be a record of the vehicle." As Logan made his call, Ethan knelt beside Duke, one hand resting on the shepherd's powerful shoulder. "We'll get through this, boy," he murmured, drawing strength from his partner's unwavering loyalty. Logan ended his call, expression grim but determined. "My contact will meet us in an hour with security footage. But we need to move now. They've expanded the search perimeter." As they prepared to leave, Ethan realized that in the span of a single day, he'd gone from respected officer to hunted fugitive. His only allies were a dog, a journalist with his own agenda, and a junior officer who was risking her career, perhaps her life, to help him. "One question," Ethan said as they headed for the service elevator. "Why are you helping me? This could get you killed too." Logan's eyes held the hardened look of someone who had seen too much. "Because 15 months ago, my brother was found dead of an overdose 3 days after telling me he'd discovered something dirty in his precinct. He didn't use drugs." He checked his weapon, a compact Glock that Ethan pretended not to notice. Reynolds was his commanding officer. With that revelation hanging between them, the unlikely allies descended into the gathering darkness of the New York night, carrying evidence that powerful men would kill to suppress. Retry nightfall shrouded the Brooklyn safe house, a converted warehouse with steel-reinforced doors and windows covered by industrial shutters. Logan had explained that the building belonged to a former intelligence operative who now provided secure locations for journalists working on sensitive investigations. 3 stories below, the relentless rhythm of New York traffic created white noise that would mask any conversation from surveillance equipment. "Home sweet home," Logan muttered, activating a series of locks on the reinforced door. For the next few hours, at least. Ethan surveyed the sparse interior. A metal desk supporting multiple monitors, a worn leather couch, and a kitchenette with bare essentials. Duke immediately began a perimeter check, his nails clicking against the concrete floor. "We can't stay anywhere long," Ethan noted, setting down the duffel bag Logan had provided him with essentials. "Not with every cop in the city having my photo." Logan nodded grimly. "My contact at the hospital came through." He inserted a thumb drive into one of the computers. Security footage showing Flynn being transferred from the ambulance to an unmarked van. License plate partially visible. The grainy footage showed medical personnel being held at gunpoint while the unconscious agent was moved. Ethan leaned closer, studying the armed men. Those aren't police uniforms, but their tactical movement is professional. Military or contractor training. Private security, Logan confirmed, freezing the frame on one man's shoulder patch. Aegis Defense Solutions. They provide specialized security services for government contracts. And he pulled up another screen showing corporate filings. One of their major shareholders is Senator William Hargrove, the head of the Senate Defense Committee, Ethan said, recognizing the name from news headlines. "Exactly. He oversees billions in military spending and weapons procurement." Logan clicked through more documents. And according to Flynn's files, several large shipments of military hardware never reached their intended destinations overseas. Instead, they were diverted through a network of corrupt officials and sold to private buyers, including some on international watch lists. The scope of the conspiracy unfolding before them was staggering. What had begun as a suspicious incident in a park was expanding into something with national security implications. We need to move this up the chain, Ethan insisted. There must be someone in the federal government we can trust. That's the problem, Logan replied, gesturing toward Flynn's files. According to his notes, he didn't know who was compromised. That's why he was operating alone, gathering evidence before making his report. A sharp series of barks from Duke interrupted them. The shepherd was positioned at the window, hackles raised. Logan immediately killed the lights and moved to a control panel, activating exterior cameras. On the monitor, a dark sedan cruised slowly past the building, then circled back for a second pass. Could be coincidence, Ethan whispered, though his instincts told him otherwise. The vehicle stopped across the street. Two men emerged, their movements precise and coordinated as they scanned the area. Definitely not coincidence, Logan confirmed, reaching for his weapon. Back exit now. They moved swiftly, gathering only essential equipment. As they reached the rear stairwell, the sound of the front door being breached echoed through the building. How did they find us so quickly? Ethan hissed, Duke at his heels as they descended the stairs. Someone's tracking us, Logan replied grimly. Your phone, maybe mine, the memory card, Ethan realized suddenly. If Flynn was under surveillance, they might have planted a tracker in his equipment. They emerged into an alley behind the warehouse. Logan pointed to a motorcycle partially hidden under a tarp. That's our exit strategy. Electronic key in the ignition. A shout from above was followed by the distinctive sound of a silenced weapon. Bullets peppered the ground near their feet as they sprinted for the motorcycle. Go, Logan shouted, turning to provide covering fire with his Glock. I'll hold them off and catch up at the secondary location. I'm not leaving you here, Ethan protested. Take the evidence and go, Logan insisted, firing another round. If they get both of us, it's over. The address is programmed in my phone. I sent it to yours. Making a split-second decision, Ethan lifted Duke onto the motorcycle's extended seat, then mounted and kicked it to life. The powerful engine roared as he sped down the alley, bullets ricocheting off brick walls around them. In the side mirror, he caught a glimpse of Logan engaging in a firefight with their pursuers before rounding a corner and losing sight of the warehouse. For the next hour, Ethan navigated a complex route through Brooklyn's industrial areas, doubling back and changing direction frequently to ensure he wasn't followed. Duke maintained perfect balance behind him, the shepherd's training evident even in this unusual situation. When Ethan finally deemed it safe, he pulled into an abandoned loading dock to check the address Logan had sent. It led to Queens, near the water, a considerable distance away. As he prepared to continue their journey, his burner phone vibrated with an incoming message. The text was from Ramirez. Reynolds knows about Harris. Claims journalist kidnapped you. Media reporting officer abducted by domestic extremist. APB for your rescue. Stay hidden. The implications were clear. They were rewriting the narrative. If he were spotted now, any officer would believe they were saving him, not arresting him. It was a clever tactic that turned every cop in the city into an unwitting accomplice. A second message arrived, this one from an unknown number. Ditch phone and memory card. Trackers confirmed. 4th and Williams, Storage Unit 217, code 5591. Get there before dawn. Logan was alive, at least for now. Ethan removed the battery from his phone, then studied the memory card. After a moment's hesitation, he took a photo of each screen of evidence with a disposable camera Logan had included in the emergency kit, then reluctantly left the memory card under the wheel of a parked truck. They'll find it and think they've won, he told Duke as they mounted the motorcycle again. But we still have what matters. As they merged back into the sparse late-night traffic, Ethan Carter knew the rules had changed. He was no longer just running from corrupt officers. He was being hunted by a sophisticated network with resources, connections, and the terrifying ability to rewrite reality to suit their narrative. And somewhere in the city, Agent Flynn and the complete evidence of their crimes were still missing. The keys to proving the truth before Ethan's own identity was completely erased by those who would silence him. Storage Unit 217 was tucked away in a corner of a sprawling facility in an industrial section of Queens. The sodium lights cast harsh shadows as Ethan approached cautiously, Duke keeping pace beside him. Dawn was still 2 hours away, but the city's ambient glow diluted the darkness, making Ethan feel exposed. The padlock opened with the provided code, revealing a 10 by 10 space filled with newspaper archives and equipment, clearly one of Logan's backup locations. A military-grade footlocker sat in the center, freshly opened with contents placed on top, clean clothes, a prepaid phone, fake ID, and an envelope of cash. At least he made it here, Ethan muttered to Duke, who sniffed the locker carefully before relaxing slightly. The new phone contained one saved message. Check the printer. Facial recognition scanning all transit hubs. Stay off-grid. Meet at location B when safe. A compact laser printer in the corner held a single sheet, a schematic of what appeared to be a private medical facility in Westchester County, with one section highlighted in red. Handwritten notes indicated security rotations and a potential entry point. This is where they're keeping Flynn, Ethan realized, studying the layout. The facility was isolated, surrounded by wooded private property, with a single access road. Perfect for hiding someone who needed to disappear. A sharp scratching at the storage unit door made Duke growl softly. Ethan reached for the light switch, plunging the space into darkness before easing toward the door, positioning himself to the side. "It's me," Ramirez's hushed voice came through. "I'm alone." Ethan cracked the door, verifying her identity before allowing her inside. Officer Ramirez looked exhausted, her uniform replaced by civilian clothes, dark circles under her eyes. "You're taking an enormous risk," Ethan said, closing the door behind her. "They're watching my apartment," she replied, dropping a backpack on the floor. "I told my sergeant I was staying at my sister's after receiving threats related to this morning's incident. Bought me a few hours." She glanced around. "Where's Harris?" "We got separated. Hoping he makes it here before dawn." Ethan gestured to the facility schematic. "You know about this place?" Ramirez nodded. "Aurora Medical Research Center. Officially a private rehabilitation facility for high-profile patients. Unofficially, it's got connections to certain government contracts." She unzipped her backpack, revealing her service weapon and extra ammunition. "I'm not going back to the department. They're cleaning house. Anyone connected to finding Flynn is being reassigned or investigated on trumped-up charges." The gravity of their situation settled into the small space. 3 law enforcement professionals, now fugitives, up against a conspiracy with tentacles reaching into multiple levels of government. "We need more than just what was on that memory card," Ethan said, thinking aloud. "We need Flynn himself, his testimony, and whatever else he collected. And we need a secure way to release it all simultaneously," Ramirez added. "Something they can't simply bury or discredit." The storage unit door slid open again, revealing Logan. His left arm was bandaged, dark blood seeping through the makeshift dressing, but his eyes remained focused and alert. "Good, you're both here," he said, securing the door. "We don't have much time. They found the memory card, which bought us a few hours while they celebrate their win, but they'll realize soon enough that we could have copied the data." "You're hurt," Ethan observed. Logan dismissed his concern with a wave. "Flesh wound. Had worse in Fallujah." He moved to a laptop connected to a satellite uplink hidden among the storage boxes. "I've been working on our escape route." He pulled up detailed floor plans of the Aurora facility. "Flynn is here, 2nd floor, West Wing. Security is private military contractors, armed and authorized to use deadly force to protect their patients." "You make it sound like a prison," Ramirez commented. "More like a black site with medical equipment," Logan replied grimly. "They take people there who know too much, but might still have value for information extraction." Ethan felt a cold knot in his stomach. "So Flynn is being interrogated? Or will be, once he's stable enough," Logan confirmed. "My source inside says he's still unconscious but recovering. They'll want to know who he shared information with and what evidence might still be out there. Which means we need to get to him before he regains consciousness," Ethan concluded. "Before they can question him and realize we have copies of his evidence." Logan nodded. "Exactly. But we can't just walk in there. And even if we get Flynn out, we still face the problem of getting the information to the right people without being intercepted." Ramirez leaned against the wall, thinking, "What about the U.S. Attorney's Office? The Southern District has a reputation for independence." "Too risky," Logan shook his head. "We don't know which officials might be compromised. Remember, this involves military-grade weapons disappearing. That suggests involvement at multiple levels." Ethan studied the facility plans, an idea forming. "What if we don't try to extract Flynn at all? What if we bring the evidence to him? Logan looked up sharply. You're suggesting a direct confrontation, Ethan confirmed. We don't try to sneak Flynn out. Instead, we go in with everything we have and create a situation they can't control. He pointed to the facility's communications tower. That's satellite uplink. Is it just for the facility or does it connect to a larger network? It's their primary communication hub, Logan replied, understanding dawning in his eyes. Military grade, capable of secure video transmission to multiple agencies simultaneously. So we create a situation where they can't silence us. Ethan continued, the plan crystallizing. We get inside, secure Flynn, and broadcast everything we have directly from their own facility to multiple agencies simultaneously. FBI headquarters, Department of Justice, major news networks. A forced disclosure, Ramirez nodded, excitement building. They can't stop the transmission without cutting their own communications. Logan was already typing, pulling up additional schematics. We'd need a distraction to get past the main security checkpoint, and we'd need access codes for the communication system. I can handle the distraction, Ramirez volunteered. I still have my badge and uniform in my car. I can approach officially, claim I'm following up on a related case. And I might be able to get us those access codes, Logan added. I have one more contact, someone who used to work security system installation for government facilities, including this one. Ethan looked down at Duke, who sat attentively at his side. And we'll need Duke. His tracking abilities can lead us straight to Flynn once we're inside, regardless of where they might have moved him. The impromptu team fell silent, each contemplating the dangerous plan taking shape. The odds were overwhelming, the risks enormous. If they failed, they would likely disappear into the same system currently holding Flynn, or worse. We should all understand what we're agreeing to, Ethan said finally. This isn't just about exposing corruption anymore. We're talking about confronting a network that spans from the NYPD to federal officials, people who have already demonstrated they're willing to kill to protect themselves. Ramirez straightened her shoulders. I took an oath to uphold the law. That means something to me. Logan's expression was harder, tempered by personal loss. They already took my brother. I've got nothing left to lose. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of his service weapon, returned to him by Ramirez, against his side. In 12 years with the department, he'd never once drawn it in anger. Now, he was planning what amounted to an assault on a secure facility. Then we move at dusk, he decided. When shift change creates maximum confusion. He looked at his unlikely allies, a rookie officer driven by idealism, a journalist fueled by vengeance, and a dog whose simple loyalty had started this entire chain of events. One way or another, by tomorrow morning, everyone will know the truth. As they began finalizing details, Ethan couldn't help wondering if any of them would live to see that morning. The Aurora Medical Research Center rose from the wooded Westchester landscape like a modernist fortress. Its gleaming glass facade concealed reinforced concrete walls and state-of-the-art security systems. As twilight descended, the facility's windows illuminated one by one, creating the illusion of a peaceful medical center rather than the fortified black site it truly was. From their vantage point in the dense woods bordering the property, Ethan, Logan, and Ramirez conducted final equipment checks. Duke sat alertly between them, a tactical vest strapped to his powerful frame. Logan's idea, offering the shepherd some protection against potential threats. Communications check, Logan murmured into his earpiece, adjusting the small microphone near his mouth. Clear, Ramirez confirmed, securing her police uniform. The plan called for her to approach the main entrance officially, creating their initial distraction. Clear, Ethan echoed, checking the secure satellite phone they'd use for the broadcast once inside. Around his neck hung a specialized camera that would transmit continuous footage to multiple news outlets and federal offices simultaneously. Logan checked his watch. Security rotation begins in 4 minutes. Ramirez, you're up. She nodded, a flicker of anxiety crossing her face before determination replaced it. See you inside. With practiced confidence, she strode from the tree-line toward the facility's main entrance. Through binoculars, Ethan watched as she approached the security checkpoint, badge displayed prominently. Right on cue, Logan activated a series of false alarms on the facility's eastern perimeter, courtesy of his security expert contact who still had remote access to some systems. Movement at the East Gate, Logan reported, monitoring security channels through a hacked radio. They're dispatching a response team. On the main entrance video feed they'd tapped into, Ramirez was gesturing animatedly, keeping the remaining guards engaged as the facility's attention shifted eastward. Now, Logan signaled. Ethan and Duke moved swiftly through the shadows toward the service entrance, where a delivery truck was scheduled to arrive. Logan had timed their approach perfectly. The security camera above the door entered its blind spot cycle exactly as they reached it. The keypad yielded to the access code Logan's contact had provided. Inside, the sterile hallway stretched before them, clinical and anonymous. Duke immediately lowered his nose to the ground, picking up human scents. "Find him, boy," Ethan whispered. "Find Flynn." The shepherd moved with purpose, leading them past supply rooms and empty laboratories. In their earpieces, Ramirez's voice came through. "I'm in. Heading to the control room now." According to their intelligence, Flynn was being held in the medical wing on the second floor. As they approached the stairwell, a security guard rounded the corner, freezing at the unexpected sight of an armed man and a dog in tactical gear. Before the guard could react, Logan stepped forward. "Federal marshals," he stated authoritatively, flashing a convincing but entirely fake badge. "Special patient transfer. Level 7 clearance." The guard hesitated, hand hovering near his weapon. "I wasn't notified of any transfer." "That's the point of a covert extraction, isn't it?" Logan countered smoothly. "Check with Director Mercer if you want." Though he specifically requested this remain compartmentalized. The name drop worked. Mercer was the facility's actual director. The guard's hand moved away from his weapon. "I'll need to verify." A sudden blaring alarm cut him off. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the hallway. Ramirez had reached the control room and initiated the second phase of their distraction. "Sounds like we have a situation," Logan said urgently. "We need to secure our asset now. Either help us or get out of the way." Confused by the alarms and the apparent authority, the guard stepped aside. "Second floor, West Wing is locked down. You'll need executive clearance." "Already have it," Logan replied, holding up a security pass they'd cloned from facility records. As they continued upward, Ethan's earpiece crackled. "I've locked down the communications wing," Ramirez reported. "But they're trying to override. You've got maybe 10 minutes before they regain control." On the second floor, Duke's pace quickened, his nose working furiously as he tracked Flynn's scent through the antiseptic hallways. They encountered 2 more guards, but the combination of the facility-wide alarm, their confident demeanor, and Logan's forged credentials got them through. Duke finally stopped outside a room at the end of a secured corridor, pawing at the door. Through the small window, Ethan could see a man lying in a hospital bed, connected to monitoring equipment. Agent Flynn, pale but alive. Using the clone security pass, Logan opened the door. Inside, Flynn's eyes fluttered open at their entrance, confusion giving way to recognition as he saw Duke. "The dog from the park," he whispered hoarsely. "Agent Flynn," Ethan acknowledged, quickly checking the room for surveillance devices. "I'm Officer Ethan Carter, NYPD K-9 unit. We found your memory card. We know about Reynolds, Senator Hargrove, and the weapons trafficking operation." Flynn struggled to sit up. "How did you?" A fit of coughing interrupted him. "Save your strength," Logan advised, taking up position by the door. "We're broadcasting everything you discovered, plus our own evidence, in about 7 minutes." Understanding dawned in Flynn's eyes. "They told me all evidence was contained. That no one would believe me." His gaze sharpened. "The laptop? The files? We have copies," Ethan confirmed. "But we need you alive to testify. Can you walk?" Flynn nodded weakly. "With help." Ramirez's voice cut through their earpieces. "Security teams converging on your location. They know something's wrong." Logan checked the corridor. "We need to move now." Broadcast room is 1 floor up. Helping Flynn from the bed, Ethan supported the agent's weight while Logan led the way, weapon ready. Duke moved ahead of them, alerting to any approach. They had nearly reached the stairwell when the first shots rang out. Logan ducked back as bullets splintered the wall beside him. 3 armed guards, he reported tersely, were cut off from the main stairs. "Service elevator," Flynn gasped, pointing weakly to his right. "Maintenance access. Card won't work. Needs code." "What's the code?" Ethan asked urgently. Flynn managed a pained smile. Investigation 101. Always check under the blotter. He pulled a small paper from his hospital gown pocket. Memorize this. First day here. The maintenance elevator was cramped but functional. As they ascended to the third floor where the broadcast center was located, Ramirez's voice came through again, now tense and breathless. I'm compromised. They've breached the control room. I'm falling back to the rendezvous point. Get out if you can, Ethan ordered. We'll proceed with the broadcast. The elevator opened directly into a utility corridor leading to the facility's communications hub. They encountered no resistance. All security personnel had been drawn to Ramirez's location and the second-floor disturbance. The broadcast center was a technological marvel. Satellite uplinks, fiber optic connections, and multiple transmission systems designed to maintain the facility's communications under any circumstances. Logan immediately began connecting their evidence to the system, while Ethan helped Flynn into a chair. We have maybe 2 minutes before they realize where we are, Logan warned, fingers flying over the keyboards. The system is asking for executive authorization. Flynn gestured weakly for Ethan to bring him closer to the console. With shaking hands, he entered a complex series of commands. Internal affairs override, he explained. Only works once, but gives us full broadcast capability for 15 minutes. Can't be stopped without taking down the entire Eastern Seaboard secure communications network. Logan's eyes widened. That's one hell of a failsafe. In case this place ever went rogue, Flynn managed a weak smile. Ironic, isn't it? The system hummed to life, screens illuminating with connection status to multiple agencies. FBI headquarters, Department of Justice, Homeland Security, major news networks, and, at Flynn's insistence, the United Nations Security Council. We're live in 30 seconds, Logan announced, positioning the camera. Carter, you take point. You're still a sworn officer. Your testimony carries legal weight. Ethan nodded, stepping into frame as the transmission indicator switched to green. Behind him, the screens displayed a collage of evidence: financial records, weapons manifests, surveillance photos, and video clips incriminating dozens of officials. My name is Officer Ethan Carter, badge number 35792, NYPD K-9 unit. He began, his voice steady despite the circumstances. I am broadcasting from Aurora Medical Research Center in Westchester County. With me is FBI Internal Affairs Agent Michael Flynn, who was abducted and nearly killed for uncovering a weapons trafficking operation involving high-ranking members of the NYPD, defense contractors, and elected officials. Flynn leaned into frame, his hospital gown and injuries providing visual testimony to his ordeal. I certify that the evidence being transmitted is authentic and was gathered during an official FBI investigation. As they continued outlining the conspiracy, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Security teams would be converging on their location, but it no longer mattered. The truth was flowing outward, unstoppable, reaching hundreds of secure terminals simultaneously. The door to the broadcast center burst open. Captain Reynolds himself stood in the doorway, flanked by armed security contractors, his face contorted with rage. "Cut the transmission," he shouted, weapon raised. Now, Logan stepped between Reynolds and the console. It's too late. It's going to every federal agency and news organization simultaneously. You can't bury this. Reynolds' expression shifted from anger to calculation. You have no idea what you've done. The implications for national security don't work, Flynn interrupted weakly. This isn't about national security. It's about greed. Your greed. The standoff stretched for what seemed like eternity. Reynolds' weapon trained on them while the broadcast continued. Then, unexpectedly, shouting erupted from the hallway. FBI, drop your weapons. Building is secured. A team of agents in tactical gear poured into the room, weapons trained on Reynolds and his men. Leading them was Ramirez, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Turns out the FBI director doesn't appreciate having his agents stabbed and kidnapped, she explained, a tired smile crossing her face. When our broadcast reached headquarters, they scrambled a team that was already in the area investigating missing weapons shipments. As Reynolds and his men were disarmed and restrained, Ethan felt the adrenaline that had sustained him finally beginning to ebb. Duke pressed against his leg, a steady, reassuring presence amid the chaos. It's over, Logan said quietly, watching as FBI technicians secured the evidence and continued the transmission. They can't cover this up anymore. Flynn, still weak but alert, shook his head. Not over. Just beginning. The investigation will take months, maybe years. Network is extensive. But as Ethan watched Reynolds, the once powerful captain now in handcuffs, he knew the most dangerous phase had passed. The truth was out, spreading across secure channels throughout the government and media. By morning, the story would be inescapable. The conspiracy of silence was broken, and the long process of justice could finally begin. 6 weeks after the broadcast from Aurora Medical Center, Ethan Carter sat on a bench in Riverside Park, watching Duke chase autumn leaves carried by the brisk November wind. The shepherd's playful bounds contrasted sharply with the weight Ethan still carried from recent events, though the burden had lightened somewhat with each passing day. His phone vibrated with an incoming text from Logan. Turn on any news channel. Now, finding a nearby cafe with a television, Ethan watched as breaking news banners scrolled across the screen. Senator William Hargrove was being led from his office in handcuffs, FBI agents flanking him as reporters shouted questions. The headline read, Senate Defense Committee Chair indicted in weapons trafficking conspiracy. Quite a sight, isn't it? Said a familiar voice. Ethan turned to find Agent Michael Flynn standing behind him, looking remarkably recovered. Though still thinner than before, Flynn had regained his color and the sharp alertness in his eyes. I didn't know you were back in New York, Ethan remarked as Flynn took the seat opposite him. Just arrived this morning. Witness preparation. Flynn nodded toward the television. Hargrove's arrest makes 17 high-ranking officials so far. The investigation is reaching into 3 federal agencies and military procurement divisions. A waitress approached, and Flynn ordered coffee before continuing in a lower voice. Reynolds is cooperating fully. Turns out he's eager to reduce his sentence by providing names further up the chain. How high does it go? Ethan asked. Flynn's expression turned grim. Higher than we initially thought. The weapons weren't just being sold domestically. They were being channeled to conflicts overseas, places where official U.S. involvement would be politically problematic. The implications were staggering. What had begun as apparent police corruption had expanded into an international arms trafficking network with geopolitical implications. What about Ramirez? Ethan inquired. The young officer had been placed in protective custody immediately after the Aurora incident. She's been offered a position with the Bureau once this is over, Flynn replied with a slight smile. Her actions impressed the right people. Duke trotted over, sensing Ethan's serious mood and resting his head on his handler's knee. Ethan scratched behind the shepherd's ears, drawing comfort from the simple loyalty of his partner. And what about me? Ethan finally asked the question that had been hanging over him for weeks. He had been on administrative leave since the incident, his future with the department uncertain despite being cleared of all wrongdoing. Flynn set down his coffee cup. That's actually why I wanted to meet. I've been authorized to make you an offer. He slid a folder across the table. The FBI is establishing a new joint task force focused on internal corruption and arms trafficking. We need people who've proven they can't be bought or intimidated. Ethan opened the folder to find official documents outlining a position for him. And for Duke. You want us both? The dog's non-negotiable, Flynn said with genuine admiration. His instincts are what broke this case open. Besides, we're expanding our K-9 program for detecting weapons and explosives. You'd be an asset to the training division. The offer was unexpected but not unwelcome. Ethan had been wrestling with whether he could return to the NYPD, knowing what he now knew about the depth of corruption that had existed within its ranks. What about Logan Harris? Ethan asked. The journalist saved both our lives. Flynn nodded. He's been offered exclusive access to the investigation as it progresses, within security parameters, of course. His reporting on the case is being considered for a Pulitzer. Beyond the cafe window, New York continued its relentless pace, citizens hurrying past, unaware of how close the city had come to becoming the epicenter of an international weapons trafficking network. There's something else you should know, Flynn added, his tone turning serious. Not everyone connected to this conspiracy has been identified or apprehended. Some very powerful people are watching their empires crumble, their reputations destroyed. They know exactly who's responsible. The warning was clear. Despite their victory, danger remained. Ethan glanced down at Duke, remembering how this had all started with the Shepherd's insistent pawing at a car trunk. "So it's not really over," Ethan observed quietly. "It never is, not completely," Flynn confirmed. "But we've dealt them a blow they won't recover from. The network is exposed, their protection gone. Now it's about dismantling what remains and making sure nothing like this happens again." The cafe television switched to footage of Captain Reynolds being escorted into the federal courthouse, his once imperious bearing now diminished by prison attire and handcuffs. "I'll need time to think about your offer," Ethan said, though in truth, his mind was already mostly made up. The past weeks had shown him that fighting corruption required more than just dedication. It needed institutional support and resources that the FBI could provide. "Take all the time you need," Flynn replied, standing to leave. "Just not too much. The preliminary hearings begin next month, and we'll both be key witnesses." As Flynn departed, Ethan remained at the table, the folder open before him, Duke vigilant at his side. The Shepherd's initial discovery had unraveled a conspiracy that spanned continents, implicated dozens of officials, and likely saved countless lives by preventing military-grade weapons from reaching conflict zones. His phone buzzed again with another text from Logan, meeting my editor about the full series. Drinks later to celebrate Hargrove's perp walk. Ethan smiled slightly as he replied, "Name the place. Duke and I will be there." Outside, the late autumn sun broke through clouds, casting momentary brightness across the city. Ethan gathered the folder and stood, Duke immediately rising beside him. Whatever path he chose, returning to the NYPD or accepting Flynn's offer, he knew with absolute certainty that his partner would remain at his side, loyal and uncompromising. As they walked through the park toward home, Ethan reflected on how a single moment of trust in his dog's instincts had changed everything. Duke had sensed something wrong when no one else would listen, setting in motion events that exposed corruption at the highest levels. Sometimes, Ethan realized, the most reliable moral compass wasn't found in regulations or chains of command, but in the unfailing instincts of a partner who saw the world with uncomplicated clarity. Duke had never questioned whether to do the right thing. He simply had. And in a world where right and wrong could become dangerously blurred by power and politics, perhaps that simple certainty was the most valuable guide of all. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and if you've watched this far, comment "I watched this far" and share your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the end screen. It's very exciting.